Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. Today, I'm Ruben Mendive, by the way. I keep forgetting to introduce myself in these things. Today, my guest is someone who I found out about last year. I've run it out for, and actually got to see some of his work. I think his play was the last one, and it left everybody feeling great leaving the theater. So he was already on my list of people to interview. So to start, I have my guests introduce themselves. So, just a short little blurb of who you are, where you're from, how you identify, just so people can sort of get an idea and hear what your voice sounds like. If you want to go ahead.
My name is Richard Villegas Jr. I'm from East LA, and I identify as a queer Chicano writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning.
At the beginning.
Yeah. So where, and I know this is a sort of like a loaded question for, Latinx people, but like, where are you from? Where did you grow up,
Well, I'm from East LA, so I'm like OG East LA.
Yeah.
Which I know that can be contentious in this era, but I was born in Lincoln Hospital, which is now defunct. You can drive by it and it looks like a decrepit old building.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I was born there. I grew up there. And about 6 years ago, I returned to East LA area, and I'm currently living there now. So I've lived in other parts of LA, but my formative years were spent in East LA.
Did your parents were your parents also born in
Yeah,
East LA?
actually, you know what? My family has been in the United States since 1916.
Oh, wow.
So over a century we've been here. And my parents grew up in East LA also.
Mm-hmm.
And my great grandparents were in East LA, and my grandparents also. In fact, they're like, I live on the same block that my great grandparents settled in when they first came. And my great grandparents are buried in Calvary Cemetery, which is not too far from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin lives behind me.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt lives behind both of us. Like, it's just like real old school in the way that we live, with lots of family around. So I'm continuing the tradition. Actually, when I moved back to East LA, a lot of my family who have since moved away from East LA were like, why are you moving back there, But it's someplace I felt I needed to be, and it's been very, very beneficial for me to be there.
Yeah, and it's interesting, speaking to that, how we sort of how we are conditioned growing up to be like, your whole mission to be a successful like son or daughter is to move out of the neighborhood, like to be like socially and economically to move upward. You have to leave where you grew up, and that's to some is seen as a sign of success, So it must be interesting to move back, and then because I'm sure you want to reinvest and you love where you're from. That sometimes I think about is we maybe are taught to not have pride of where we grew up, the people we grew up around. So sometimes moving back to the neighborhood seems like a step backward,
For a lot of people, yes, particularly in my family. And the whole point, you're right, is to get away, to get out of the barrio. That's how you determine your success. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely was my family's story. Yeah. I mean, everybody upped and moved to Whittier. Mm-hmm. And Whittier was seen as like more upper middle class, a safer neighborhood, a whiter neighborhood, with better schools, et cetera, et cetera. And I went to college at UCLA, so like I lived in Westwood, I lived in Hollywood, I lived in West LA, I lived in Santa Monica, I lived in Echo Park, like I lived in some pretty awesome, cool neighborhoods. Yeah. But there was something calling me back. I did want to return. I wasn't really sure what it was, but since I've been there, it has been interesting re-experiencing the neighborhood, no longer as a child, but now as a man. So, I'm encountering familiar things such as my school, even some of my old friends. But now I'm a grown man, so it's just like a different experience. And, don't get me wrong, it's still a barrio. Yeah. So it's still fucking irritating sometimes, like it's a vibrant place to be. I do appreciate that. A little bit too vibrant sometimes, particularly on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
But it's still lovely. It's still like filled with music and color and smells of food and like people living in close quarters. Your neighbors are pretty close to you.
Yeah.
And again, family and history for me.
Yeah, and it's important that we see value in the communities we're from, that it shouldn't be an escape, because that sort of seems like some sort of like self-inflicted wound to move out of where you're from because somehow you are now better than that place, and what does that say to your family still there, to all your friends that are still there, and also your childhood there, like it's interesting that how we can't just say like I love where I'm from. Of course I would move back there, like no one says that to white suburbanites,
Yeah.
No one says, oh, thank God you got out of there.
Yeah.
So it must be an interesting dynamic.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because I know I've spoken to teachers who teach high school, and I was in particular speaking to a high school teacher who taught French at one of the East LA high schools. And she told me a story about hearing the former mayor give a speech telling the kids, oh, they need to go to college and then come back and return to the neighborhood and reinvest, And she was like, fuck that. If they want to go and travel the world, they should be able to do that. And, I agree. I saw her point of view. I was like, yeah, of course. I was like, if you don't want to ever return to your old barrio, and you want to instead go live in France or in Thailand or whatever.
People in Ohio do that too. They move out of Ohio and move to a big city.
Yeah. So I don't want to burden Latinx young people with like having to return to the barrio or having to return to their hometown. It's just one of the options, and it was one of the options for me. And I'm a Cancer and I love home and I'm a homebody, and I feel really connected to my roots. And this is one way that it's manifesting. But at the same time, I have traveled to a lot of the parts of the world. I just like returning.
Yeah, and we should be proud of that,
Yeah.
So let's talk about like your family history, in East LA. What do you know about like your parents and your grandparents, your great grandparents? Like, what was that community like? What did they do?
Well, it was a big, unruly Mexican community. Originally, we're from Zacatecas, but my great grandfather came from Zacatecas up to Los Angeles. But the thing about us is that we zigzagged across the border back and forth. So wherever it was more economically viable, we went. So initially, we traveled up and down California picking fruit or vegetables in the fields, and then settled for a little bit in Los Angeles and sometimes in Fresno. The Depression came. We're like, fuck this, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So we went to Chihuahua, but then my great-grandparents had a bunch of American kids.
Yeah.
And those, which were my grandparents and their brothers and sisters. And they were like, we don't want to live a rancho life.
Yeah.
So they had American citizenship. So they came back in the 40s and again settled in East LA. And there was a tribe or village mentality where like aunts and uncles, cousins lived across the street or on the next 2 blocks away or just down the street. Everybody lived near each other, It's like a pueblo, but East LA style. So my parents grew up in that environment. They went to Garfield High School and they went to Belvedere Middle School where I live now, as did my aunts and uncles. and everybody just kind of grew up with each other and married other people from the neighborhood. And now everybody lives mostly in Whittier. It's interesting to see how tribes migrate with each other. They just kind of like circle each other, and we circled each other in Zacatecas and circled around each other in East LA, and then in Chihuahua, and then back to East LA, and now in Whittier. So that's been the environment, and I grew up in that. And now we're more dispersed because we're such a large family. Yeah. But like I said, I've returned and reconnected with some of the remaining members of my family there.
Yeah. And so what was like your childhood like there, you know, like how would you describe, you know, your home life? Do you have siblings, you know? What did your parents do?
Well, I grew up, my father was a deputy sheriff, and my mom was at that time a homemaker. So he had a relatively good job.
Yeah.
There's 3 of us. I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother and younger sister. And I grew up in a strict household, a very macho household. So we had to follow the rules and keep out of trouble. Initially, I went to elementary school, public school, but then I went to Catholic school. So it was cool. And there was always lots of cousins around, you know, because we lived right in front of my grandparents. And then my aunt and uncle lived across the street. And everybody in the extended family would come down on the weekends to visit my grandparents. So there was always people around and always cousins, you know. And in fact, you know, there's a real strong sense of cousin culture, which I think a lot of like ethnic communities have a certain value, hold a certain value for cousins, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm close with a lot of really, my cousins who are part of my extended family, you know, like they'll ask me, how are you related to this person? I was like, oh, wow, our grandparents were sisters, you know, or like our grandmothers were sisters or whatever, you know? So it was that type of environment, very, very East LA, very familial, very local, very provincial in a certain sense. And I had a good time. And it's funny to think I didn't realize I was living in a barrio. I look back at the popular culture examples of East LA at that time. And I was like, oh, well, I guess it was kind of dangerous. You know, I guess it was gang infested. Yeah. But when you're living in it, it doesn't really like hit you. You just think of it as normal.
Yeah. So let's talk about like high school. Like, what were you like in high school? Who was you? Who were you, or who were you pretending to be? You know?
Oh my God, I was in high school. I hated high school. High school's so stupid.
It's not. Somehow we all survived, but just barely.
Well, I shouldn't say hate. Hate is a strong word, but so I was a good Catholic schoolboy. So I went to a Catholic all boys high school.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I had a best friend in like grammar school, and his brother went to this Catholic all boys high school, and I was just like a puppy following him around, you know. So everything that he did or wanted to do, I wanted to replicate. And when he was going to follow his older brother to this high school, I was like, oh wow, I want to go too. And so we went, and it was actually like a great experience. It was all boys, so you know, I like that, you know. But also I liked it not only for the obvious reasons, but because not that I was out at that time, but like the guys really didn't act like dicks, you know.
See, that's my fear. That's my fear of an all-boys school like that. I'd be eaten alive.
No, because I think a lot of times that's performative.
Got it.
They're doing it to impress girls or to seem tougher or whatever. Yeah. And ours was, well, one, it was Catholic, and two, it was like highly academic. So it was a lot of nerds, you know. And so everyone was. You know, boys are boys. You know, like they're dicks sometimes. Yeah. But everyone was pretty much cool. Everyone was concentrating on their studies, you know, and it was small. So there was like 80 guys in my graduating class. Oh, wow. Everybody knew each other. We went to class with all the same people, you know, and there was actually out gay students at that time. You know, this was like the early 90s. So they were brave and amazing, and the Teachers were amazing. It was run by the Salesians. And it was, it was strict. There was a lot of discipline, but it was also academically challenging. And I enjoyed it. I was like super religious. Like I was part of campus ministry, which was like the nerd group that got together and put together the masses, and I love doing it. I love arranging what songs and readings we would have.
Yeah, there's something about the ceremony and like,
oh my god, so
pageantry.
gay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, like I love the pageantry, and like I said, I wasn't out. I knew other gay people there, and they kind of took me under their wing. We were all in the smart AP classes, and they would tell me about their adventures when they would go out, which was really intriguing, so they were, at that time there was this club called Arena and Circus. It was like pretty famous. So they would get into those clubs, and they would invite me kind of with like a knowing invite, but they never pressured me, they never pushed me. They were so cool. I totally appreciate that. But at the same time, it still was high school. Yeah. It was stupid. We're just like, I want to get the hell out of here. I want to go see the world. I want to go to like college. I want to get the hell out of my house. Like, so whatever I could do to get out of there, I was going to do that. Which for me, that was like being smart. Yeah. So I knew that if I was a good student, I would get into a college, and college was going to be my ticket out of my house. And I could be like whatever the fuck I wanted to be. Yeah. And that plan became pretty clear to me. And so I focused on it, and it was good. I don't think that's the plan for everybody. Yeah. But for me, that was the path.
Because I was going to ask, that's usually the question I ask after we talk about high school. It's like, what did you do after high school? What was the plan? Because sometimes the plan doesn't always, these don't always go according to plan. So what did you do after high school?
No, so the plan was to get out of my house. Yeah. So, and the thing was, I wanted to get far away because, my household was kind of stifling too. I think on some level I knew I was gay, I wasn't out, but I was looking for a safe place to go, and I knew university would be it. So I got into UC Berkeley. But my parents were like, that's too far. Don't go over there, and they wanted me instead to commute to UC Irvine, which I also got into. I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. I was like, so the compromise was to go to UCLA. And so I lived there. So it was like kind of far, but not too far,
I mean, it's even like me being in LA right now, like, that's far. Like, I'd be like, I'll never see you.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, no one's going to drive over there, you know? So not from where we lived anyways. Yeah. So then I went there, and it was amazing. I just had tasted freedom for the first time, and I just like met all kinds of people, gays, like Sikhs, like just like random. Like I remember meeting a Coptic Christian, and I was like, oh, I've never met a person like this before. People from all over the world and all over the country, with different sexualities, different genders, different races. And it was amazing, And so I came out almost immediately, which, had a lot of consequences for me in my household. And
so you didn't do the like gay at school and then like you go back to at home and then you sort of like...
No, you know what? I'm not a good liar. Yeah. I can write fiction. But it's hard for me to lie. Yeah. Which is funny because I remember being in a writing class and them suggesting that, in order to be a great fiction writer, you have to be a good liar because fiction is lies. Yeah. But I actually don't believe that. It's hard for me to tell a lie, but I can make up stuff. But there has to be some truth to it, And like when you first come out, I was like, oh my God. It's funny that you bring this up because in the 90s I started to keep a journal. I started journaling, right? And I look back at the journals, it's so gross. I was so boy crazy.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God, it's all about like every single entry. It's like, oh, and then I saw him, and then we did this. I was kind of disgusted with myself because it was just so central. But I had this pent up energy, you know, like I was like a 18, 19-year-old man or boy.
Yeah, but it's like this sort of arrested development for your, you know, sexuality and sort of like your that like those butterflies and all the like first things, you know, like
it was intense because I was not only was I boy crazy, but I was being intellectually stimulated at UCLA. Like I was just reading amazing texts, you know, like I was taking all these Chicanx Studies courses. We were introducing us to like Sherry Moraga and all these like Chicana feminists and African American gay men writers, you know, like just blowing my mind, you know. And then at the same time, the political situation was going crazy too, because there was all these like anti-immigrant propositions and anti-people of color propositions on the California ballot. So I remember like Proposition 187 had passed at that time.
Can you explain that to people?
That was a proposition that denied public services to undocumented immigrants, including schooling, which was fucking and it passed, you know.
And that wasn't because illegal from like the Supreme Court, or was this the result of that?
Well, no, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. Like the Supreme Court had already ruled that public schools should be open to undocumented immigrants. And so, it was. So, of course.
And it passed.
Racist, xenophobic, like California passed it, but then it was challenged in the courts, you know. And I remember thinking it was like the first time, it was like, you know, I was coming into my sense of self as a sexual person, as an intellectual person, as a writer, and also as a political person. And I remember it was the first time I had voted. And I don't know if it was that election, but I remember being cognizant of that election. And I remember feeling the sense of defeat, you know? And I was like, oh my God, the state that I live in is so horrible. I can't believe they passed it. But, you know, it ended up having all these unintended consequences, you know, like the power of the Latino vote increased because of that. Like hordes of people became citizens because they just hadn't before because they were lazy and didn't want to do the paperwork or it was too expensive or whatever. But it kind of like prompted them to.
Yeah, it backfired. The whole point of to like marginalize us people, and then they revolted.
So I'm knocking on wood that the same thing's going to happen for this moment right now that we're in. You know,
I'll knock with you.
Because, you know, I've seen it before happen, and look what California has become because of it. So it happened in the early 90s, and I was just entering college at that time. And so I'm sure, you know, these things happen in cycles, and hopefully it's going to happen again. So yeah, college was, UCLA was just amazing because it was just, I was blowing my mind and blowing my wad because with like boys.
And what was your major in college?
Well, it was American literature because I loved reading. You know, I was a book nerd. And then almost immediately I became a Chicanx Studies major. You know, I had the foresight to do something that I loved. You know, it's like, I love reading. I love books. I love literature. I love writing. This is what I'm going to major in. It wasn't like I was like thinking, oh, what am I going to do once I get out of college?
Okay.
Which, you know, is maybe I should have been thinking that, you know.
That's a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Well, I ended up spending 6 years there. Okay. I took forever.
And you know, I just saw this, like, I don't even know if it's real because I saw it on Instagram, but they say the average time that people spend before they graduate is 6 years.
For Latinos or?
For just like on average.
Oh.
Like, so we have this myth that it's a 4-year college experience. Yeah. And for a lot of people, the average amount is 6.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just the mentality of how we also like in the media and how we see college represented in a 4-year.
I kind of wish I would have not taken so long. Well, one, because it was expensive. Yeah. And two, you know, I kind of fucked around too much. I really did.
So yeah, what was the result of the 6 years? You know, like, why did it take 6 years?
Because I was boy crazy. And instead of like going to class, I was going out, but that's part of our education too, right?
Yeah. Expensive, but yeah.
Well, not only boy crazy, but there was a lot of political activism.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be hanging out, my friends and I, and instead of going into class, there would be like a protest, We're like, oh, we're going to take over Murphy Hall today. And like, yeah. So we would go like have a sit-in and in a building and miss class, So particularly in the first, and then I would only like to take the Chicano Studies classes,
Yeah.
Like I think I failed math 2 like 2 times. It was, and then I just didn't know. Like there was so much I didn't know. Like this whole thing, I could have taken a lot of classes pass, no pass, instead of taking a letter grade, which affected my GPA.
Yes.
It's those like little stupid things that I don't think we're given support on. No one told me, so I went like a couple years getting D's and F's on like finite mathematics or geography 2.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous, and I could have been taking pass no pass all that time.
Yeah, I feel like the universities purposely make it that hard because they want money, and it's also like they tout, like we're a diverse campus, we're this, but then they don't. Once the diverse students get there, then they're trying to function in a system.
I mean, they did have support for us, but even finding that support was sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about going to UCLA, because it's so world famous, we just had amazing people come and visit the campus. And I remember one time Bell Hooks came to give a talk. So of course I went.
Yeah.
And this black graduate student stood up and asked her, what would you tell a black female grad student about grad school? Like, do you have any advice? And then she said, you have to tell yourself every day that you belong here. And I was in the audience and I was like, oh my God, yes, because when you're there in university, there's so many messages from the registrar's office, from financial aid, basically saying you don't belong here.
Yeah, because it's a white institution.
Yeah, and it's just like, the dorms are like, where's your money? We need you to pay this.
Yeah.
Or the registration offices, we need you to pay that. They just want your money. They don't care whether you actually are there or not.
Or if you're succeeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I heard her tell that message to that woman, I took it to heart. And I was like, oh, I belong here. So if I belong here, then I should be going to class more. I need to like study more. I need to like belong here in a way that people who feel entitled belong there.
Yeah. So, which is a crazy drug that they should sell, because I would love a shot of that every day.
Yeah, a lot of times we have to work on that. Like when you're in those rooms, you have to say, I belong here, and I have to act like I belong here, because if I don't, they can tell. Yeah. And so that was really an important lesson for me. And so finally, after 6 years, I graduated and I left that institution.
And were you in Westwood that entire time? Like,
I was in Westwood, and I was also in West LA and in Hollywood.
Yeah. And like, what did your parents think of your time there? Like, were they like on you for it taking so long, or?
No, they were just, I think they were disassociated. They're like, oh, he's going to college, and that's all they knew. They weren't at that time necessarily paying for it. They would like help me out. They would give me $150 every month, which, I think they thought that was like a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I could barely make my rent. I could barely eat, but they didn't know that.
Yeah. And again, it's like, they're giving you what they can, so you can't be like, oh, actually I need 300, and they're like, because again, it's like, okay, from where,
I really wasn't eating. Taco Bell used to have the 99-cent burrito, and I would eat 99-cent burritos every day. You know? And it was just they were just disassociated. Like, they didn't know what classes I was taking. They didn't know. They just wanted to know when graduation was going to be. And it ended up being 6 years from when I started. And they came and celebrated with me, which is fine. But I don't know. There was because they didn't go to college, they just didn't understand.
Yeah. You graduate, like, again, what was the plan? Like, what were you thinking at that time?
I was so sick of being poor.
Yeah.
I just like, because there was like some inklings, maybe I should go to grad school, right?
Mm-hmm.
But graduate students look poor too.
Yeah.
And then I had a degree in American literature and Chicano studies.
Yeah. So they don't hand out checks with
Which
us.
I am so proud of that degree. I love that degree.
I'm jealous of that degree. If I even knew what Chicano was in college, I would have like.
And did they have anything there or like?
I don't know if they had. I'm sure they called it ethnic studies. First of all, secondly, I didn't really even know what Chicano meant. Like, that's not something that's taught in Chicago public schools. I would hear it sometimes and be like, I know it's related to Mexicans and I'm from Chicago. So like, is that what that is?
Well, I'm skipping over like a bunch of stuff. I'm an old man now. So like one of the things I skipped over is that the year that I entered into college, there was a lot of like activism on behalf of Chicano studies. And so there was a hunger strike that went on at UCLA at that time. That it was some students and a professor that were starving themselves until UCLA provided some sort of like ethnic studies program in Chicano studies. And they succeeded. And they got, so like my first year there, this happened. And so I stood those 6 years and saw the development of the Cesar Chavez Chicano Studies Center, which is now a department, I ended up working there actually. So I was so fortunate to be there at that time and have an amazing set of like Chicanx professors, particularly Chicana feminists, from Sonia Saldivar Hall, Alicia Gaspar de Alba, Monica Palacios was a lecturer there, like Dina Gonzalez, just amazing professors.
See, and that's sort of what I missed because, again, I went to college during the Obama years, so we were like, he's got it. And secondly, like, I didn't have any Latinx professors when I was in college at all.
Not one? The 4 years, were you 4 years?
Four, not one. I did have a lot of Black professors, and that's also how I picked up, Black feminist theory and all this stuff. So, and that's, I think, something that's can maybe people relate to in the absence of our own Latinx, theory and schools of thought. We sort of latch on to Black, like, because I know so much about like Black films and I know kids who went to USC who don't know who Bell Hooks is, and I'm like, how is that possible? Like, but
you need to shame them.
I do shame them. No, are you kidding? I was playing a game of like Cards Against Humanity, and they were like, one of the cards said Toni Morrison, and the whole table was like, who is that?
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's awful.
And I was trying to explain to them, but I was like, and by the way, now my boyfriend who didn't know has read 3 of her books.
Okay, right on.
I'm literally just handing them to him. We're at a bookstore. I'm like, let me check this one section.
No, you're making me realize, and I've known this before, that I just had such a special education because get this story. Like, so we had these amazing Chicana feminist professors. So they would, of course, bring all their friends to campus, So like Sandra Cisneros would come, Emma Perez, like all these like writers. And of course, and then at that time we had a Latinx gay and lesbian organization called La Familia. And so Sherry Moraga came, and then we invited her down our house, and she came to our house and had enchiladas with us. Like, I don't know if they would do that now, but just like major Chicana lesbian writer, feminist theorist, like, and then chilling with you, eating enchiladas at your house. You know?
And it's sort of like, when you have like theorists and intellectuals of that are Latinx, then you sort of are. It's like that. If you see it, you can be it. So then you start thinking like, oh, like if they're sitting down with you, you're eating enchiladas. I'm sure you're talking about how you're growing up. You're like, oh, this person's just sort of like me. Like, I could also like be pushing the envelope and expanding minds on the Latinx experience,
Yeah, totally. So that's what happened. That was my education, and I'm so grateful for that and for them.
Yeah. So
then I was poor.
Yeah.
With this amazing degree. And, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but, someone had told me, another writer, Claudia Rodriguez, she's a poet. She told me about, because she's from Compton, and she told me that this Catholic school in Compton was hiring teachers, and there was this real progressive principal. So I went down and I became one of the teachers at this school, and it was kind of a mess, and it was at a Catholic school, which, I went to Catholic school, so I didn't have a problem with that, but it was just a little bit too intense, and I didn't know if I wanted to return to that, but it was a paycheck,
Yeah.
It's a long story, but I was like, I had to get out of there.
Yeah.
So by December of that year, that was like 1998, I was like, I need to get out of here. But at the same time, LAUSD was hiring teachers. And there was a major teacher shortage. So it was so easy. Like, you just needed to be able to breathe and you can get an emergency credential and start teaching.
Yeah.
So there's a whole story in that, but I became a teacher, and it was good because it was a good gig. It was an adequate salary. It was amazing vacations. I was still in the academic calendar, and great benefits. And I didn't feel like I was doing anything bad. It was there was a meaningfulness to it, And so I started teaching. I became a kindergarten teacher, actually. That was my main teaching job. And I ended up doing that for 20 years. So I've been doing I'm actually going to be ending that in 9 days. So I will end my career as a kindergarten teacher in 9 days.
And what, I don't know how easily you could summarize it, but what is the life of a kindergarten teacher?
A life of a queer kindergarten
well,
teacher?
especially, because I'm still nervous about how queer teachers are treated, just in the sense of this institution they're teaching in, and also the parents and the kids, and how is that space, and I'm sure it depends on what school, what city, what state. But well,
I mean, there's a lot of gay men teachers.
And I feel like there was some in my high school, but it was just something we didn't talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't teach high school.
Yeah.
Well, first, I don't even like teenagers, so that's just not something I would want to do.
Yeah.
But I like early ed. I think it's really important, particularly for Latinos.
Yeah.
Preschool, kindergarten, first grade, those are so essential, And you actually feel like you're doing something. You can actually see them learning. The progression from September or August until the following June is amazing. You're like, oh my God, I'm actually doing something,
Yeah.
So that was always very gratifying. And they're kids. So it's weird because they don't know how to read gay. I mean, the kids nowadays are getting more savvy, So I don't even think they knew I was being gay, I'd be singing and dancing and doing all this I guess typically feminine stuff, but they just they were just like, oh,
play.
That's just Mr. Villegas. That's the way he is, But it's funny because they are still kind of macho because already they've been socialized for the first 5 years of their life. So if I wear a turtleneck sweater or something, they're like, why are you wearing a girl sweater? And I was like, it's not a girl sweater.
Yeah, but it's interesting how even at that age we're already policing each other.
They're totally policing. They totally police my outfits, you know? or then but that's just kids,
Yeah, they're just spitting back everything that's being poured.
I totally fuck with them because they'll be because I have a laptop bag, right? That I take and I carry my laptop. Yeah. So I'll be like, go get my purse. Yeah. Your purse? Is that a purse? I was like, yeah, it's my purse. Go get it, Yeah. And so I just
I think that's what they call the gay agenda.
I totally had a gay agenda.
Yeah.
So I was totally, and it's cute. You could tell the one, I was like, this one right here, that one's gonna
Those are the gifted ones. Yeah. That's what I think they call them in elementary school.
He's going to play for my team, this one right here. Yeah. And so, but I try to protect them too. And also you see the sometimes the boys police the girls. Like the girls can't play with the blocks, or they can't play with the cars or whatever, or they police the colors. They still do that, you know. And so I'm trying to not do that. But I mean, I don't know. It's like off and on.
Yeah.
Because
because I have like nephews that are that age right now, and you know, it's very much that thing. You know, like, not to call anybody out, but it was sort of saying, just like commenting from their school environment and being like, oh, they don't see race, you know, like they just like are just friends because they're friends. And again, like, I totally agree with that. There is a blank slate as you're born into this world, but the second you're into this world, things are being totally shot into you, sublimity.
Oh, well, yeah. As soon as you leave your mother's womb, you're being like
conditioned
and colonized. Yeah. Because I have 3 African American students in my class right now, and you know, I've had the Latinos in the class be racist against them. You know, and it's upsetting because I know they're just repeating whatever they hear from their parents.
See on TV, see on billboards, magazines,
and so on
the street.
It's, you know, we talk about it. Sometimes I get upset, you know, I get mad at them. Because actually the Latino kids, they don't see themselves as brown.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, they're like they think they're white.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not white. I was like, look at your skin, you know, and then I show my skin and we compare his skin. So I was like, you're brown.
Yeah.
And
that worries me. When you know, as Latinx people, we, you know, I say that we have a proximity to whiteness, and how some of us tend to lean way into that, and to the point where we're just like fully drinking the Kool-Aid, you know, like
there's still a lot of work to do, but it's actually kind of cute sometimes because I remember one kid, I was like, no, you guys are brown. He's all, no, I'm not, I'm swirl. And I was like, he's all, my face is brown, but my legs are white.
Like, that's just wear shorts. Like, yeah.
So yeah, they have their own way of making sense of the world, and sometimes
because again, they do walk around and see you know, like, it's not a racist child. It's just a child. Children notice things that are different, especially when when they call you out about something. It's just because they see so many instances of what a man should act like.
Yeah.
And when you deviate from that, then of course they notice it, you know?
Yeah. But things are slowly changing. Like there's more boys now that have long hair. Like I have a little boy that has long hair in my class. There's even boys that I've had that have earrings, which I didn't see that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's those stupid little aesthetic things.
Yeah.
At least in kindergarten, they become a big thing, you know. But they're moments or they're points of discourse.
Yeah.
For 5-year-olds, you know.
You know, my fear is always just like a parent's gonna complain or something, you know.
Well, yeah, parents complain regardless. So, like, whatever you're doing, there's going to be parent complaints, which, you know, you just learn as a professional how to deal with that. But there's a lot of work to do. Let me just tell you.
All right. So when did the writing come in?
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. This is a writing podcast, right? So I think I've always been a writer in the sense that I love writing. I love words. I love reading, you know, ever since actually one of my first memories, my earliest memories is learning to write my name. Like I remember when I first learned how to write R.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I just assumed everybody remembered that, but and it was my parents. It was my parents who helped me write my name, and I remember being very proud of it and going to show my grandmother who lived in the back. And I was ready for kindergarten because I knew how to write my name. And for me, that's when I first became a writer, because it was the first time I ever picked up a writing utensil and wrote a letter, you know. And since then, you know, I've been obsessed with words and books. And my father would even say that we would go into a store like Target and I would run straight to the book section, not the toys. So they encouraged that. They were very encouraging. And I think I remember in 8th grade getting a writing assignment and being happy about it. You know, we had to do an assignment on adjectives. And I was like, oh my God, I get to use adjectives.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this whole thing, and I remember being so excited to write it, and I wrote it, and I handed it in to Sister Catherine Mary. And her comment was like, "Did you write this?" You know, and so it was like kind of like a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
Like she liked it so much, but she was like, "Oh, did you do it?" You know. And so then I was like, to me, I was like, I took that as a compliment. I was like, oh, this means that I did so well that she didn't even believe it was me.
Yeah.
And so I continued like to write a little bit here and there, but it wasn't until college that I started taking all these Chicano Studies courses. Again, Chicano Studies.
Yeah.
Where I was basically given a space to write, a permission to write. Particularly, I would call out my professor, Alicia Gaspar de Alba, because she offered these courses such as the bilingual writing workshop. And we would, it was basically a creative writing course, you know. And also artists would come in, such as Monica Palacios, and we would have to write a one-man show or whatever, you know. Cool. So the Cesar Chavez Center at UCLA, them offering these courses was essential to my writing, my burgeoning writing, you know.
Yeah.
And then at the time, a bunch of like queer Chicano writers, we got together and we formed a group called the Calijotos, which was like a queer writing collective. And we were intent on trying to publish our work, you know, and like write our poetry and our essays and our poems, you know. So we were really encouraging with each other. But, you know, it wasn't so easy at that time to like get things out there. Yeah. But so that was my initial writing experience. It was really in school and at university. And there was a time when I left university where I was like, well, how do I continue to do this? And I talked to one of my mentors, Sonia Saldivar-Hall, who's a professor at UT Austin. And I asked her, what should I do? She's like, take classes. So I started taking classes at through UCLA Extension, writing classes. And they were expensive, but I think that's one of the ways that you show you're serious about something. You're willing to put money into it. Like if you're a tennis player, you're going to pay money to do tennis, you know? And if you're a writer, then you're going to use your money to write, you know? And so I started taking a lot of courses at UCLA Extension. And then the moment came where I was like, you know what? I think I want to go to grad school and get an MFA. I don't think you need an MFA to become a writer, but I'm a schoolboy. I've always been a schoolboy. And whenever I think about new endeavors, I was like, okay, what class do I need to take? You know? And again, that's my personal preference, and it's not for everybody. So that's when I applied to USC and I got into the Master's in Professional Writing. And I think that was very momentous because it was the moment when I was like, I'm going to spend a lot of energy, time, and money on becoming a writer, you know, for me, what was a writer. And the thing, it was an interesting choice of program because it was called the Professional Writers Program, which I didn't really understand what that meant.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, so the first class that I took, the woman who taught it, she was, you know, real dramatic. She was like, this is a professional writing program. That means you're expected to get paid for your writing. And I was like, oh, damn. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. You know, like, and I hadn't ever made that distinction before, you know, like, because I love writing so much, I was willing to do it for free, and I was going to do it for free. And so it was cool because she set up a competition that first class. She's you're here to write and you're here to submit your writing places. You're not just going to write like because you want to. So, and it was kind of nerve-wracking. I was like,
I'm nervous right now.
I know. She was like, it was like Debbie Allen in like Fame, where like she's like talking mean to the dancers or whatever. So I was like, oh my God, this shit's getting real, right? So she said we had to write 2 personal essays and submit them to be for publication, you know? And she's like, whoever is the first person to get it publicized, then they will win a bottle of champagne or whatever, some stupid prize. And granted, I'm in a room full of like white people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm already like intimidated because the bar is set high. These people seem like they belong here. I'm just like here as a kindergarten teacher. And then I won. I ended up like writing an essay. I submitted it to the San Francisco Chronicle, and it got published, you know? And no one congratulated me. Like, I was like, I won, and everyone was just like, yeah, whatever, you know. But I was happy for myself. Yeah. And there was one other woman who was like, who helped me publicize because she liked it so much, and she was a journalist, and so she like helped me get it published, and she was very happy for me too, and she's been great.
What was it about?
It was about how I walk into stores and I'm mistaken for working there. Yeah. And so like because it was happening to me a lot, you know. I would
Which stores?
Well, like I would walk into Target.
Target's a big one. I've heard multiple Target stories. Yeah.
And I'm not even wearing red or like beige pants, or I was not wearing the uniform, but still people would ask me for help, and I was like, I'm not dressed as someone who works at Target, you know. Yeah. And like, or even worse, like I remember going to the Walt Disney Concert Hall once, and I thought I looked so cute. I was like, I'm so handsome right now in my little outfit, and then this drunk woman comes up to me and asks me for directions to the restroom or whatever. And I felt so deflated because I was like, even if I try to look nice, I'm still mistaken as someone who works someplace.
They just see the brown skin and black hair.
And that's why I know people might hate me for this, but I do not like wearing guayaberas. Because every time I wear guayabera, people think I either work at that restaurant or I'm a waiter, you know? Yeah. Which kind of sucks, you know. I think guayaberas are nice and men look handsome in them, you know? And I used to wear them a lot. But then there was times when I would be wearing a guayabera and be eating, and people thought I worked at that restaurant, you know?
Yeah. That's a special kind of just like a sword right to your ego. You're just like, oh. It's sort of like so much with your identity and your ego and you know, laced with racism, and you're just like, I was just walking.
I'm just breathing and wearing clothes, and like already all this identity is being pushed on me. So I just wrote about that. I called it my magic eight. I didn't call it. They called it that. The people who the Chronicle who published it, because I talked about it as like an apron that I'm always wearing that I can't take off, you know? And so that was it. And I ended up getting published, and it was the first time I got published. And so, you know, I caught the bug. Yeah. And so that program was great for that, because not only you had to pick a focus, and I picked a novel writing as a focus, because of course I wanted to write the great Chicano novel, which hasn't happened yet. But they made you take other genres. Like I took poetry classes, I took screenwriting classes with actually, and they had amazing people like Sid Field. I don't know if you ever heard of him. So John Recchi, who I don't know if you've heard of him. He was teaching there, so I took a class with him. And he's like one of the first, I think, gay Chicano novelists, you know. And there was another, there was all kinds of amazing writers there, you know, and it was tough. It was a tough program for me. And the most curious thing I thought is I didn't make very, very many friends, because a lot of times I was excited because I was like, oh, I'm going to have this community and I'm going to meet all these writers and we're going to become friends and like
go for drinks.
And be like, and I met like one or two friends in that program. And to me, I mean, I really think it was the whiteness of it, you know. I don't know if they didn't see me as a valuable friend, or as maybe there was just no sense of connection, or I don't know. And I think there was a sense of competitiveness, you know, as highlighted. But like the first time I was there, it was a competition. It was like, who can get published first? And I won the champagne, you know.
Lonely champagne.
Just to drink with myself. So That was a really strange experience, because usually in every program that I've ever went, I've like my credentialing program for teaching, I made tons of friends, lifelong friends that I'm still friends with today. Yeah. But in this program, I didn't, and I thought that was always really curious, So yeah. So,
and where are they now?
Yeah, well, I maybe they're Facebook friends, but that's about it.
Shout out to them.
So I graduate again from. Now I have a master's in professional writing. I'm still a teacher. I'm still taking classes through UCLA Extension, and then one of the teachers, this Filipino writer, he invited me to be part of a reading at Skylight Books in LA. And so I went to the reading, and the people in the audience really liked me. And people kept on coming up to me. It was like, oh, where can I get your stuff? Your writings. And I was like, oh, nowhere, because I published like one thing.
Yeah, let me text it to you.
Yeah. So I was like, well, how am I going to get writing? And the thing is, I don't like submitting, like when you submit to like, I guess, be part of a literary magazine or whatever. I know this is my own like personal issues. Yeah. I hate the word submit, first of all. And two, it just seems so onerous, not that I haven't submitted to different places before, but there's some people that just seem really dedicated to like,
it's a whole it's a part-time job.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know if I'm lazy or just filled with too much ego, but I was like, I don't want to do that, I rarely do unless like I feel very compelled to do it. So since I wasn't going to submit anywhere, I was like, I started hearing about self-publishing. So I was like, no, let me look into this, and I liked it because all this time I had been writing a bunch of short stories. Yeah. And writers need readers. And these people in this audience that I had at this place that I had read at, they wanted my stuff. And if I was on Amazon, I could just be like, oh, well, go to Amazon, So I started collecting my pennies and taking my vacations to try to put together some sort of self-published book. And I spent a pretty penny, like I wanted it to look a certain way and have a certain sense of craft to it. So that meant I had to hire a bunch of people to copyright it and put it together, and a graphic designer and buy the ISBN codes and all this other stuff.
I didn't have to buy those.
Yeah, you totally have to buy them. You have to buy the UPC symbols too. Wow. Everything, of course, costs money, right? So, and it adds up. But if I spend money on vacations or going out to drink, then I could spend money on putting together a book. So I did, and I self-published it, and it was great because now I had some place to send people. It's like, this is my name. Go look for my stories. They're on Amazon, on Richard Villegas Jr. if you want to find them.
Also available on Kindle. I actually read one of them last night.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I read I Heart Babylon.
Okay, that was it. That was 2011. Yeah. So then I did that. And you know what? Okay, so I'll tell you a magical story. Okay. And I'm not promising that this will happen to everybody, but I think there's a message in it. Okay. And I really want to encourage people. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit. But I self-published these stories, right? And fast forward years, and I ended up self-publishing another story, And I know a lot of people look down on self-publishing because they just want that sense of validation from publishing houses. But I really didn't have that hang up.
Yeah. Plus, those are their own whole institutions with their whole hang-ups and barriers and just because it has the stamp of a publishing house doesn't mean that it's valid.
Yeah, and I wanted to be culturally specific, and I didn't want to have to translate what I was writing about to these gatekeepers. So I just did it myself. In the meantime, I'm still always working on this great Chicano novel that supposedly I'm supposed to complete one day, right? Yeah. And so I go away to a writer's retreat called Squaw Valley, up north and by Lake Tahoe, because I wanted to work on this novel. And I haven't gone to many of these things, but it was actually really cool because they have... Well, there's a cool part where you meet a bunch of people and you have this sense of community. And there's these great teachers. And I took an amazing workshop with a man named Gil Dennis, who was a screenwriter for Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash pick. You know, he made a life-changing like workshop that I took. So anyways, so I met a bunch of great people there, right? And I ended up staying connected to them once I came back down to LA after that retreat was finished. And interestingly, they were mostly white, you know, and some of the Latinos I made friends with up there, they didn't seem to want to continue to have a friendship with me, you know. Like sometimes our people are not the most supportive, but whatever. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's all. You know, because to the white people you make friends with, it's like you don't have that much in common, and with maybe the Latinx people, you're in competition with them. You know, they see you as like, it's not like kindredship. It's like, oh, let me size you up. Like,
you know, I think there's a real truth to that. Unfortunately, through these people, a producer got a hold of my self-published stories, you know, and she wanted to meet me. And so we had a meeting, and then we talked about it, and she talked about my writing, and she really enjoyed my writing. And then she asked if I had ever written for television. And I was like, no, I hadn't. And she was like, okay, well, thank you very much. And that was the end of the dinner.
But also the advice is always say yes. If someone says, are you writing a novel? Say yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what happened to that?
So we had that meeting, and then about a month later she called me back. She said, Richard, we really like your voice and we really like your writing.
Yeah.
And we want to hire you to develop a television show. And she's all, how does that sound? I was like, oh, fuck yeah. I was like, yeah, totally, right?
Yeah.
Because they were going to pay me. And again, the woman in that course, she had put that in my head. She's this is a professional writing program. You're expected to be published, and you're expected to be paid for that.
Yeah.
And I had never thought that way. I was like, I'm a Chicano poet. I'm gonna go like write poetry, you know,
and through that change the world.
yeah. And I still do that, right?
Yeah. You could totally still change the world like that.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. But once this offer, I was like, yeah. And so, she said, she's all like, we want. She said, there's only 2 requirements for the story that we're gonna write. She's all, it has to be about a bar, and it has to be take place in Boyle Heights. East LA, which is where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure. She's all, whatever else you want, you can make up, you know? So, and it was right in summer of 2015. And I just had fun. I spent the summer in my apartment just writing this, you know, and having fun with it. And like telling the stories of the women that I knew in East LA, which were my cousins, you know, and whatever stories I had heard from them. Because I just, you know, sometimes I find women's lives compelling, particularly in a context of East LA, Boyle Heights, you know, and particularly in a context of a bar, because at that time, I had been in East LA for a little bit, and I would drive past Red's, which was this old Latina dyke bar. And, you know, it had been there forever. And I saw the neighborhood changing. And I was like, I don't think that bar is going to survive this change, you know. And so then that was very inspiring too. So then that's when I wrote a treatment for which I didn't know what a treatment was. But the thing was, these producers, they kind of held my hand through the process. She's like, we know that you're not a television writer. Yeah. So we'll teach you and we'll give you examples. Yeah. And then I would hold like meetings with them, and they would tell me, oh, well, this wouldn't work for TV. And we're thinking about this because, you know, some of the things that I didn't think about was if you're writing television ideas for television, you have to like pack the story with a lot of potential.
Yes.
Because they want a lot of seasons to come out of that.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about that. And so they're like, okay, remember this. And then the other thing too, they're like, and we don't want any flashbacks. For some reason, they didn't want any flashbacks. And I was like, oh, how am I supposed to tell like the backstory if there's no flashbacks? Yeah. So I had to figure that out. And then it was funny because the first thing that I wrote, it was like this strange hybrid, like short story / treatment, you know. But then they gave me examples of like, set up the premise. Here's set up the list of characters. Set up the backstory. Write the story arcs for all the characters. Yeah. And I was like, and like I said, I had no pressure, so it was fun for me.
Yeah.
And it was like they were paying me to learn. So it was a great experience. And I had never been paid so much money to like write before.
Yeah. So
I was also excited about that. And, I didn't know what was going to come out of it. I was just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote this. Well, and the other thing too, I wrote a lot because I was having so much fun. And then when we got towards the end of the process, I think it was at that time, it was like 24 pages. They're like, this is too long. No one's going to read this.
Yeah.
You're like, you need to cut it down to 12 pages. So that was actually really hard. The editing. I tried to like pack all this story into 12 pages. And then that's when I wrote, ended up writing Por Vida, P-O-U-R, Vida, which they were happy with, and almost immediately they had a prior relationship with Stars, the network. And they're like, Richard, we want to pitch it. I finished writing it in like September, and then in October they're like, wait, we want to pitch it. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that means, but yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
So again, at this point, everything's like fun to me. There's because I had no expectations. It's not like I expected like anything of this. I just was like, this is a cool experience. I'm gonna go with the flow. So then we go into pitch it with the executives who like, you go into this like conference room that looks like a spaceship. There's this like line of executives that like don't smile. They just look at you, and you sit there and like that's
exactly what it's like. With like dance, monkey dance. You like this move? What about this move?
Let me tap dance for you.
Oh no, you're not liking this. No, I meant this. Like
And so then, and they don't, they ask questions, and they were cordial and nice, but they don't smile, and they don't say any affirmations like, oh, that's a good idea. They don't say anything like that.
Scary.
Yeah. So I was a little like weirded out by that. But when we left the meeting, the producer was like, oh my God, it went so well. And I was like, really? I was like, they didn't even smile, She's like, no, I know. It went so well, And then, things started to ramp up. And then that's when my fear came. Because now I had expectations. I was like, oh shit, what if this really happens? This is no longer just like me having fun.
Yeah.
Like things are starting to happen. And the thing was, they were like, you don't have any experience in TV. We're gonna hook you up with someone that is a television writer.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sure, cool, right, whatever. And then like there was one weekend where they were just like, Richard, you need a lawyer. And I was like, an entertainment lawyer. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I had to go scrambling to find a lawyer, and it's not like people are lined up in East LA who are entertainment lawyers, like
immigration lawyers, sure.
Yeah, immigration lawyers or fucking a car insurance or whatever. But so just through a friend of a friend of a friend, I ended up finding somebody one weekend because Stars wanted to buy the project, and I needed representation, and I didn't have any.
Yeah.
And there was other writers starting to become involved. And so to fast forward a little bit, I sold the project.
Congrats.
To Stars, and
it's VIDA is now in its second season, and it's amazing. I just binged it this weekend, and it's more than I expected. It's amazing, you know. Tanya Sriracha, the showrunner, has done an amazing job with it. She's made it queer than I thought it could ever be. Like, it looks beautiful. The acting's amazing. The production value is amazing. The writing is great. I love the writers on it. So it just what happened from me self-publishing my stories is really amazing to me. And I don't know if it can be replicated. I just know that you need to put yourself out there in whatever way that is, and not wait around for people to choose you. I know people chose me for television, but that's only because I put myself out there as a self-published writer. I wanted, like, writers need readers. So how you get those readers is kind of on you. And I'm still working at it, I'm still always trying to, like, get readers, and I'm still writing. So I think everybody's in that struggle.
And like you said, it speaks to the relationships you had, the work you were doing, and also this unique voice that you had, which, again, not to insult you, it's not that unique, but that just speaks to, like, the lack of source material, like I'm sure they had people at Stars or through production companies constantly combing through everything. And like you said, with publishing houses and all that stuff, that's a barrier for entry for basic Latinx stories to be told, to then be bought, to then be sold to television networks. But because you put it out there yourself, they were able to find you,
I think that's a really good point, because the producer that found me and asked me to write it, she said she had been reading a lot of Latino writers, but they were all telling the same story and in the same voice. And I wasn't writing to a white audience, I was writing to myself and my friends. So I wasn't trying to please TV executives or publishing houses. I was like, I'm just writing something that I would like to read. So, but I think if you're already trying to get hired by television writers, you want to please your bosses or people who are going to hire you. And so you're probably changing your stories in ways that you don't even realize, like maybe you're not putting too much Spanish, or maybe you think it's too much. And I knew that happened. That was starting to happen to me, because when I told you I got scared, when things got real, I started to pull back a little bit. Like I didn't want to be as queer as maybe I would have initially made it, or I didn't want to be too dramatic or whatever, like, because I was like, oh wait, someone's interested in this, and so I think that messed me up for a little bit, but Tanya Sriracha, who was like already experienced television writer, she had the foresight and the confidence to be like, no, I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to, she's making it her story now, so that's great. And I think they wanted my authenticity too, because they knew I was from Boyle Heights, East LA. So they didn't want someone who didn't know what they were writing about.
And because you can smell it. I mean, maybe executives don't smell it, but if it aired, like, we would have smelled it, we would have been like, they sure do a lot of translating for like Vida half the time was saying something in English and then translating it. It's like, okay, who's the audience for this, like, that immediately, like, is a red flag, or at least perks your ears up, because you're just like, oh, I can tell maybe not someone, it's not for us or even by us, you know? So you did mention, anyway, shout out to VIDA, by the way.
Oh yeah, love VIDA.
At the time of this taping, it's Memorial Day. It just got its big launch. People are binging it. It's a movement. It's so queer and so, like, Boyle Heights and Latinx and unapologetic, and And I like that you and Tanya were also, you know, speaking to that, because I think, like you said, for so many projects that get produced or being shopped around, it's there sometimes is what's appropriate to the execs or the people that are going to be greenlighting it, but also like what responsibility do we have? Because what I like about VIDA is it's a show about queer Latinx people in Boyle Heights, and it's telling like its own story that's unique to the characters and the place, and isn't trying to satisfy. It isn't trying to be the Latinx show.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's niche in it, but
that's why we need so many more, shows and writers, and like it can't just be one show, or even 2, or even 5, or even 50.
No, we need at least 20.
We need so much more. Yeah. So, I think they're out there, and
for sure,
and but people need to write and then put themselves out there. Yeah. But also work on their craft, you know, like I'm always taking courses, and that's one of the reasons why I got involved in Casa 0101, because Josefina Lopez, who's also an amazing writer, was offering a specifically LGBT playwriting course. And I was like, you know, again, the schoolboy in me, I just love taking courses, you know, because you meet, it's not even necessarily what you learn, but you just meet such really cool people, you know. And so that Brown and Out 4 year, she taught the course, and it was amazing. I hadn't written a stage play, and it was my first time.
That's your first time?
Yeah, that was my first time.
It's good. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you want to just summarize it real quick, what it was about.
So we had to write a 10-minute play, a stage play. So mine is called Cochino, and it's about this mixed race queer couple. One is a Latinx man, and the other is an Asian guy who just left the Jehovah's Witness and had never celebrated his birthday, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate their birthday. And they're living together, and the Latinx boyfriend decides to buy the Asian boyfriend a cake and celebrate his birthday for the first time.
And I get it, like, brought down the house. It's the last one of the 10, and I thought it was just so funny because, again, it was, well, I don't know if people know this, I am in a mixed race relationship, which yours sort of speaks to like the differences in cultures and traditions, but which is something I connected to, but also just like the way they fought, how dramatic it got. There's a cake involved. And while I was watching, I was like, I've had this fight. Like, I've not exactly about this, but I've had this fight where it's just like it's like we're both being ridiculous. It's out of hand, and there's humor in that. Maybe not in the moment as you're doing it, but it is like I loved it. It was so good.
Yeah, well, because my boyfriend's Asian, and we've had those fights about stupid shit, about the way I say things, and he's not understanding, you know. And we've had these big fights.
I've had those fights too, but I think that's just because I mumble too much. But no, we get a little out of hand with a cake. I've had a fight where it got out of hand with some salmon, and crawling and like sort of.
Oh my god, you have to write that 10-minute play.
No, I think my boyfriend would be like, "How dare you?" My mom's gonna see this.
No, that's their penance for being with writers.
But also that whole fight was my fault. So maybe I don't want to relive.
That's all right. You could make yourself look foolish.
But yeah, like I loved it, and that's, you know, seeing all those plays last year is what inspired me to be a part of it this year, because I was like, oh, first of all, I didn't even know there was other like Latinx queer writers that are producing and like writing stuff. This is my first play too, which I'm so excited to see. Which when is it opening? June 7th, July 7th.
Okay, right on. I got my tickets already. I'm going to be there opening night. Are you going to be there opening night?
I will be working the box office. So we'll both be there.
Okay.
So you did mention that you are going to stop being a teacher in 9 days. So what is that about?
Well, now that I'm being paid for writing. I'm just fortunate, you know, so that I can stop my day job, which is scary and nerve-wracking because teaching is, I mean, I know we underpay teachers, but it's still a great gig.
Yeah, it's a reliable paycheck.
And health benefits.
Yeah, it's no joke.
And pension and all this other stuff, you know. But honestly, I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm exhausted.
I bet.
I'm burnt out. And I don't think it's benefiting me or the kids anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to have a burnt out teacher because I've seen those burnt out teachers and just like white knuckling it to retirement. And I don't want to be that. And so it's time to really say goodbye to that. And, you know, I don't think in this day and age, people stay in their jobs for 30 years anymore. You know, that's like real old school. Yeah. And even 20 years is a long time. Yeah. And you know, there's this other teacher at my school. He's an older gentleman, even though he looks really good. He's really young. He looks really young. He just started teaching this year. And this is his second career. And it made me realize, I was like, oh, okay, you know, teaching can be one of your many careers. Yeah. And so that's, but there's a time to end sometimes, you know. So for me, I was like, oh, this is a perfect, nice round number, you know. And I was like, yeah, I've had amazing experiences. Teaching has given me an amazing life and amazing stories to tell, you know, because the classroom is such a site of so many different identities and contentious identities that it's a great context for storytelling. But like I said, I'm exhausted. I don't like the direction education is going right now. So I'm opting out of it because it's not like I can change the world by myself. Yeah, it's just time to end. So I'm excited. Okay. Like I said, 9 more days.
So what are you working on now? Like what you're ending one like journey, one chapter of your life. So what are you working on now, you know?
Well, I'm always have like 10 projects. So most immediately I'm working on a teacher memoir of my years as a teacher. So I hired a consultancy and they're helping me write that book. So yeah, I just try to work on that every day. I do want to continue writing more stage plays. I just haven't had time, you know, so that's another reason why I'm ending my career as a teacher, because I just need the time. Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of short stories that I have that I want to like publish somehow. I don't, if I have to, I will self-publish them again, you know, but I was like, maybe it's time I can get like someone, you know, like to, but even at the same, you know, again, it's just like, I do a cost benefit analysis. Part of me just wants it out there. Yeah. But because I'm working on all this other stuff, I don't know if I have the time or money to hire all the people I need to hire. Yeah. But maybe, I don't know. So they're just kind of sitting there right now. And you know, I'm starting to like think about and write other television projects too.
At this time of the show where we shout out, you know, other Latinx writers, people you work with, people you're excited about, that you see out in the world that you want us to know about, that maybe I should interview.
Well, I'm probably going to shout out friends.
Yeah, again.
I have amazing friends.
Yeah, I love when people are like, I admire my peers, you know, like, because it's important that we like, you know, like be each other's cheerleaders and admire the work, you know. Ideally, you love the work your friends are doing, and that's why you're sort of friends too, because they make you better.
Well, have you ever heard that self-help saying, like, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around?
No, but I'm doing some quick math right now.
Well, so yeah, like it's the quality of the people you hang around is going to affect you, you know? So if you like want to be around smart, creative people, you need to hang around them, you know? Yeah. So, Yosemar Reyes. He's undocumented writer, activist, public speaker. Yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah, I really want to catch, because he has his own like one-man show too, right?
Yeah. He travels around the United States,
educating the people.
Yes, and sharing his poetry, sharing his story. He has a one-man show, which is amazing, so funny, hilarious. Mm-hmm. His point of view is unique and original.
Yeah.
And so I always love hearing him perform, hearing him speak, hearing him in conversation, and his writing. Mm-hmm. So I think he's in a really important voice.
Yeah.
And he's challenging a lot of our ideas about like identity and our political ideologies. Mm. So it's always a pleasure to read or see him. Joe Jimenez. He's a poet in Texas. He's also writes young adult fiction. He just came out with a poetry book. I think it's called Rattlesnake Allegory. I can't remember right now. I haven't got my copy yet, but I am. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. He's an amazing writer. I love his poetry. I love his stories. He makes me see the world in a different way. He always introduces me to new vocabulary too. And I was at Macondo with him. Have you heard of Macondo?
No.
It's a writer's workshop that was started by Sandro Cisneros, which I was actually kicked out of, but that's a whole other podcast. And so I think those two are just really, really producing important work. Saying amazing things and saying them in amazing ways and living incredible lives. Because Joe's also a teacher. He teaches high school, and both their aesthetics are amazing too. Like, I think Yosimar calls himself undocumented socialite. So if you follow him on social media, you'll see all his adventures.
Yeah, he's living his best life.
Yeah,
for
he
sure.
is. And then and Joe too. He's all like tatted up and buff and celebrating with his dogs and his man in Texas. So I love their work and I love their lives.
All right, cool. Yeah, so check those guys out. So sort of how we wrap up the episode is I like to have my guests help title their episode, because that's how I'll like advertise it, and it'll be titled along with your name to sort of be an identifier for the kind of writer you are. Just so other people can see it and be like, oh, that's like me. Like, first of all, I didn't know there's someone else like me. Let me check it out. Or if someone sees all these episodes, they're like, oh, they haven't heard my story yet. Like, it'll motivate people to reach out. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer. And you can move the words around. You can do whatever you want, but that's sort of just like the basis. So just something that encompasses your story, how you identify, like,
So I can make it as long as I want?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, this is such a simple idea that some people give me 8 words. I'm like, I guess I'm like, okay, I'll fit it in. And I'm already figuring out the graphic.
This is going to be the title you said.
Oh, yeah, along with your name. But yeah, just so like people it'll give them, if they don't know who you are, it'll give them a sneak peek of what sort of.
When you make writers write on the spot, that makes them sweat.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. The blank. What?
A blank Latinx writer.
I'm thinking of all these ideas, but then I get scared. I'm like, oh my god, maybe I shouldn't say that.
And don't worry, I already got one that I'm like, I hope people know that person said it, not me. But again, I'm not gonna edit you. Whatever you feel like it, go for it. Now I'm scared, but yeah, go for it.
Well, no. Can I say a little caveat to this?
Sure.
Because I started referring to myself less as Richard and more as Rich, because I wanted to take the hard out of being rich. And my father was on social media and his name is the same as mine, so I was like, that's not me.
Yeah.
So I shortened my name a little bit, but it also really started to define my life as an and my writing as really abundant. And so that's what I would choose, is to identify myself as a rich Latinx writer.
All right. I mean, that's I like that. All right. See, and this prompt also tells you so much about the person. So that's why I think it's good to end on it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on. And where can people find you? Like all your social media handles.
Well, you can find my short stories on Amazon. Just type in my name, but I have 2 titles there: I Heart Babylon and La Música Romántica. My social media is mainly on Instagram, which is Emilio Ton. Emilio, so EMILIOTON. And binge watch VIDA, please. Yes, we need those stories to be watched.
Yeah. Again, for every successful Latinx show, it opens up the door for another one. For those writers